Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast. You're listening to the B2C Lead Gen Podcast. My name is Daniel Hopewell here with Simon Delaney, and this is episode 93, 9 lead distribution strategies you should be using in 2023. And much like the name of this podcast, we're going to go full on Ron Seal here and give you exactly what it says on the tin. 9 lead distribution strategies you can use to reduce your costs, increase your conversion rates, and get more sales. Simon, before we dig into these strategies, can we just establish what we mean by lead distribution strategies and who should be using them?
So lead generators and lead buyers should both be using them, but generally you'll find lead sellers mostly use the sort of lead distribution strategies, because obviously that's their job. You know, if your job is to sell leads, you take it incredibly seriously. So what we're going to be going through is how lead buyers brands should be using lead distribution strategies to optimize their performance, reduce their costs, and increase their conversions.
Yeah, and obviously we'll talk about the benefits of doing each one of these things as we work through it. But let's just dive straight in. 9 lead buying strategies. Let's go.
Okay, so number 1, deliver the lead to the right place to make a sale. Now, this is something that lead buyers can learn from lead generators. So if you're generating leads and selling them to other companies, you tend to set up a ping tree and sell one to many. Now, lead buyers need to be approaching it in the same way, which is sending a lead to the right salesperson, sending it to the right department, sending it to the right branch, sending it wherever it needs to go. And you'll often find leads either get slowed massively down doing this, so it's like Excel spreadsheets being pushed around, shared Google Docs that it's going onto, using various different plugin systems to try and distribute them into different CRMs or dialers, different teams having things. And the reality is, basically, you need to put condition sets or rules in place based on lead scores, based on criteria within the leads, based on location, whatever the details are that mean that it goes to one place rather than another. So if it's a salesperson, they're more likely to convert this type of lead, that then delivers the lead to that person, to that team, to that place. And all this has to happen in real time. And this just increases the chances of you making a sale based on the best place that is going to make a sale from that lead, getting the lead.
Yeah, it's I don't mean this in a bad way, but it seems pretty obvious when you first began by saying take it to the right place to get a sale. It's like, yeah, it seems like when you put it down like that, of course it's good, but obviously not everyone's doing that. So yeah, absolutely vital strategy.
Yeah, I just think from a lead buying thing, they don't necessarily do it. I think it's the technology is there and they're just maybe not utilizing it the best way they could.
So I think, yeah, it's utilizing, getting the most out of the lead you're buying essentially by doing this.
Yeah.
Number 2.
So number 2 is something that we've covered before, but it's always worth reiterating, is tracking performance at a granular level. Now, this means when you're buying leads and they're coming into you, whether that's either internally and it's the marketing team generating them, sending to the sales team, or you're using lead generation partners and buying the leads, you want to track every single bit of information with regards to that lead, where it came from, the ad that generated it, the landing page that generated it. You want to be able to store all of that against the lead so that you can see exactly where sales are being made. Now, this isn't like you go into a lead and start looking at it and figuring out where sales are made and whatever. You need to automate all of this, that when you run a report, you can see, okay, that ad is over-indexing by a factor of 5 compared to all the other ads. I want to pull those ones and start putting more money behind this. And also what this does is, rather than turning overall channels off, so, you know, Facebook doesn't work, or we can't work with that lead generation partner because it doesn't work, you actually start getting into the minutiae of what doesn't work. So really, you might discover it's 50% of the ads that they're using don't work. But actually, if we remove those and start using those other ads that are working, we can work with them. Yeah, the amount of leads might decrease, but so what? It's all about making sales. So you can only achieve all of this by tracking it at a granular level.
Nice. Number 3.
So speed to lead is incredibly important. It's the number one. Well, some people consider it the number one factor in getting conversions when you're buying leads. And I'd say it is dependent on if you're not booking appointments or if your strategy isn't to have conversations in some other way. So if you're not booking appointments, they're not going, okay, on the 10th of February at 2 p.m., I want to speak to an advisor. You're better off just trying to contact them immediately. And by other strategies, I mean, are you sending them SMS and having a two-way conversation on SMS, or are you sending them links via email so they can continue the purchase of a product or service on? So if none of that is happening, speed to lead is the most important thing. And this is a lead distribution strategy. It's 100% what lead distribution systems are built for. Get all the stuff that can find out whether they could be your customer and then deliver it into a mechanism like a dialer or CRM, which means you can make a sale quickly.
Like the name, you put that very quickly. That was
quickly?
Concise. As in you delivered it very quickly, but yeah, concise. Like number 4.
That's what they all say. So verify and qualify. I don't need to go through this too much. We all know you want to verify contact details and verify someone's name, qualify that they can be a customer, remove duplicates, remove suppressions, remove current customers. But basically the cost of verifying and qualifying it is like negligible, right? We're talking, let's say we were verifying a telephone number, for example, a mobile number, cell phone, if it's in the US. It costs something like £3 per 1,000 leads. But the cost of not doing it and trying to contact a bad lead or having it pollute your CRM or dialer or thinking that you're going to get the same results from X number of leads when actually you can't because you can't even contact them is huge. So it's why it forms such a big part of a lead distribution strategy, because it just makes complete sense. There'd be zero reason why you wouldn't do that. So verifying and qualifying a lead is hugely important as part of a lead distribution strategy.
Yeah, I think I've noticed that you can chart sort of the posts I do on LinkedIn and whatever, and become increasingly exasperated when I find out people don't verify leads and buy it. It just seems, especially like, I don't want to say in times of recession, but especially in times when people are really going out of the way to make sure that everything is as streamlined, as efficient as possible. It just seems like insanity not to do it.
I'm constantly perplexed by landing pages that don't either have verification on, or when they just have like the number of digits on, so you could just put like 999999 or whatever in.
Yeah.
But also, if you're a lead buyer, that you leave to chance that someone else has actually verified it and not verify it when you receive it, because that means you might have to pay for that lead. It could be a really low price lead, it could be 50p, or it could be a like far more expensive one at £50. If you're not verifying it, you've lost anyway.
I think as well, it ties into something you said, a few things you said earlier, but it's from the lead buyer's perspective, it's just about them taking control and not leaving things to chance and making sure that they are in control of what they're doing and can predict what they're going to get from their investment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Number 5, let's do
it. Ensure security and compliance. Now, this is something that's potentially the most important thing. Because if you were to follow the letter of the law from like the ICO and GDPR and whatever else, there is literally no other way that you should be delivering leads other than via an API, a secure one, not GET, use POST, so military grade encryption API, or onto an SFTP or something very secure, right? I mean, how many companies do you know that like don't do this? It's absolutely incredible. And so a lead distribution strategy for lead buyers and it's 2023. This is the most incredible thing. So, there are potential of huge fines. Is it £4 million that the ICO can potentially fine companies, like a max, or 20% of your turnover, whatever is higher, they'll go for it. This shuts companies down. The bad PR is absolutely horrific for them, because if people think you're misusing their data, yet every day we see companies transferring data around on spreadsheets, pushing it to Google Sheets, sending emails with the people's data in the body, sending it via SMS. It's kind of mind-boggling. So when when we're talking about lead distribution strategies, I mean, number one is, when the data moves from A to B, make sure that it does it securely, because even though you might think it's your data, it's not, it's someone else's. You are merely a custodian of it. And a bit like being a custodian of anything, your job is to look after it.
Yeah, I'd argue that this is the outlier to these strategies, in the sense all the other strategies are about getting the most out of your leads, getting the most out of your budget, etc. Whereas this is beyond that. It's not just a strategy for that. It's literally making sure that you don't get bankrupted by fines tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not just a strategy, it's full on protect yourself kind of thing.
Yeah, and this is where the fundamental difference between the lead distribution strategy for a lead buyer differs from a lead seller. So for a lead seller, a lead distribution strategy is about maximizing the amount of leads that they can sell. Whereas for a lead buyer, they want to maximize the amount of sales they can make, but it's also a protective thing. It's like a layer of protection that means they're not going to fall foul of laws or be buying bad data and moving things. And the sort of ensuring security and compliance within a system is one of the biggest highlights of that, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. Just basically, if you listen to this and you don't feel confident about that, pull yourself together, sort it out. Concise way of putting it.
Can I just say this? Other than Janine Patterson that came on a couple of weeks ago and was talking, we touched on it. It was nothing to do with like technology particularly, though. It was more to do with falling foul of like bad ads and stuff like that. We've never really touched on security and compliance. But like, when you think about it, it's such a huge thing in terms of technology. And it's because of thinking about it from like this lead buying perspective of them using distribution technologies. Like, it's mind-boggling that every company that buys leads on Earth doesn't have a system that manages all of that.
I think that's almost why we haven't touched upon it. It's because obviously, I don't care how I word this, but like, people using our system have the securities they need, or the tools to ensure security, and they have peace of mind that that's not going to happen. So maybe that's our fault. We kind of thought about that. Oh yeah, that's given. We've got a security in place, but the people listening maybe who don't have that and don't have that security in place, so it is a massive thing. So yeah, it's interesting. We've not felt the need to discuss that properly. Maybe we should retouch it. Yeah, we'll do that in more depth on the podcast maybe. But number 6, next strategy.
Feedback results. Again, I don't know if we've ever done a full podcast on this, but we've mentioned it a few times. Whoever's generating the leads, whether it's a lead generator partner that you're working with and buying leads from, or whether it's the in-house marketing team, they will not know where to spend money to generate better leads if you don't feed back what good leads and bad leads look like. So you need to create a feedback loop from the sales mechanism back to the coalface where the leads are being generated, because otherwise those leads will never get any better. It's that simple. This is why you need a feedback loop. And there are always two things that I hear in relation to this. One is, if we feedback the results and they're good, they're going to start putting up the CPL. And it's like, well, yeah, but you pay for it, right? Because the performance is better. That's the worst thing that happens. You just pay for better performance. And number two is, what if they use that information against us? So, they start selling that information to competitors and things. And this is don't work with people you don't trust. Make sure you've got contracts in place. Don't work with people you don't trust. If you can't trust them, this is your marketing team, whether it's internal or external. Don't work with them if you don't trust
them. Where are we? Number 7.
Deduplication. So we've done an entire podcast on this, but it's worth mentioning again. Is the nuanced approach that you need to take to deduplication. It isn't binary. It's not, oh, we've had it before, don't get it again. It's, what is the intent level of this individual? Have we had it for this product before? What was the time period we had it in before? Have we got all the details on this new lead, on the old lead that we're deduping against? What was the outcome that happened the last time we tried to contact this lead? How long is our sales cycle? Is there anything else in that data that means we should contact it immediately or not? Most companies, they take this, they'll have 2 levels of dedupe, and it's one is a prospect dedupe where they've had it in their sales cycle, and the other is more like a suppression, I guess, where it's current customers or they've come in, or a win back sales thing. And really, deduplication is much more nuanced than that. And I suspect companies miss huge opportunities with sales because they're deduping leads from different sources with different intent levels, because they just think it's the cheapest lead. So, because imagine, I don't know, you're buying like a cheap courage lead or something at 50p, and then that comes in as Solace form fill 2 days later, and it'd be £10 lead, but you can't contact the courage one. But now with this Solace form fill, you just dedupe it and keep in the same sales cycle that you would have had on the 50p lead, and not take advantage of the fact that this person's just gone, I desperately want to buy your product or service right now. So deduplication needs quite a nuanced approach.
Yeah, I think I know we're sort of honestly touching, we're just covering kind of these big ideas in this podcast today, 9 of them, so we can't go into depth in all of them, but if you do want to listen to more on that, it's episode 75, I think it was, where we go into the subtleties. I think it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't already.
Oh, 75, what a classic.
I can't really remember that long ago.
Back in 75.
So yeah, next big idea, almost at the end, 8.
So number 8 is, we spoke about this on the last podcast, and I went into a lengthy monologue for about 4 minutes, and someone just cut it down and went, Vince cut it down and went, do you mean forecasting? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. So basically, let's imagine you only get sources from 2 or 3 places. Sorry, leads from 2 or 3 sources.
Yeah.
And one of those sources fails. You've got a big problem. Like, your results going to start tanking by 50% or 33%. So the more you spread your risk, the better your forecasting, the more predictable your results. So when you buy from 10 places and one goes down, it's 10% of the performance that we're looking at. Now, in sales teams, at executive level, what they're really looking for is predictability. They want to be able to look at a chart and work out what the sales is going to be constantly. We used to have a name for this when I used to do a lot of lead buying, and we called it the relentless pursuit of mediocrity. Not that you're looking for mediocre results, but what you're looking for is a flat line.
Yeah.
Because it's predictable. You don't want to be on this knife edge of like huge performance, and then like the depths of despair the next day. You just want, it's a bit like my voice. Imagine like a low flying bomber.
But with a slight incremental growth pattern, I assume.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're always, but that just comes from, like doing the feedback loops and tracking where best sales are coming from. What you're trying to look for is like a glide path upwards. You'll hit a point where you basically can't take it any higher, but that's what you're looking for. But you can only achieve this by spreading your risk. It's like the number one way of creating predictable results, because you remove the chances of any single source interrupting things or having like a massive impact. So don't think of, the extra work involved, or don't think of managing the relationships. What you're really looking to do is just take away the unpredictable nature of fluctuations in sales and creating a flat line so that the sales managers look after the sales teams, wake up in the morning sort of knowing what's going to happen.
It's interesting how many of these points come back to giving people control, giving people the ability to know what's going to happen, no surprises, sort of consistent performance, and de-risk is a sort of variation upon the theme. We're number 9, the last strategy.
So really what this is about is a wrap-up, I suppose, of everything we've said, and it's putting lead distribution into your tech stack is really the only way to create predictable and dependable results if you're buying leads. I think it's possible otherwise. And this is what's so interesting about lead management for the buyers of leads, is you'll find they either don't have that tech, like at all, they're still mincing around with spreadsheets and pushing data around. They'll have some bastardized weird thing that they use internally that someone built from an SQL database 15 years ago. And it's just like, it's got like a shoestring attached to it. It could break at any moment. Or they end up like trying to sort of force Salesforce into some weird lead distribution mechanism, which it just isn't. It's not built for that. Same with something like HubSpot. We're talking about like a very specific technology, which we happen to have, but let's not go into that.
Also, I'll add, it will cost you like an insane amount of money to use Salesforce to do that.
Yeah, it costs shitloads. So we're talking about a really specific sort of core component of technology that has to sit between the sort of marketing team, and then whether that's internal or external, and the sales team, that is going to create this predictable and dependable results with all the stuff that we talked about, security and compliance, feedback loops, tracking, deduplication, setting up the rules about where the data needs to be delivered to, tracking the sales back to sources, because it can automate it all. And then what you can focus on is figuring out where more sales can be made, where the best traffic is coming from, who are the best lead sources, and building those results, and just trying to get that level of mediocrity with ever so slightly upwards slant rocking. That's what it's all about.
I'll say I like the 9th point because it saved me a job and it's wrapped it up for me, which is excellent work. But I will add that those first 8 points essentially can't be done without 9 in place. Like, you need a lead distribution system more or less to do all those things. So if I was being pedantic, I could argue this was simply one lead buying strategy for 2023. Make sure you've got that in place. But that's not going to rank my list here. So
maybe we should do like a 30-second podcast and just say that and go good night.
Can you imagine somehow underwhelming? There'll be just one idea for you, one strategy, those big lists you get. But yeah, no, I'm going to loop them all together and say that was episode 93, lead distribution strategies for 2023. Cool. Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.